Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Adkup Show. Today, we are diving deep into Donald Trump's mass deportation plan for 2025, what it'll cost, what benefit it might bring, and whether it's even feasible. So, stick around for the latest data and let's break it down together. So, without wasting time, let's get started. All right, if you have been following the US politics, you know President Donald Trump, back in the office since January 2025, has made mass deportation a cornerstone of his second term. During his campaign, he promised to launch the largest deportation operation in American history on day one, targeting estimated 11 to 14.5 million undocumented immigrants living in the US. As of January 2025, immigration advocacy groups like SWD.US project that numbers could be as high as 14.5 million, up from 11 million in 2022, due to new arrivals and temporary protections under previous policies. To be honest, nobody knows what are the exact numbers. Different numbers come up every week depending on who calculates. Trump's plan isn't just talk. In his first month back, he already signed executive orders, reinstated policies like remain in Mexico, and appointed Tom Homan as border czar to oversee deportation. Homan's being clear. ICE, or Immigration and Custom Enforcement, is targeting criminals first, but they're also using collateral arrests, meaning anyone near a target could get swept up, even without a criminal record. We have seen reports of nearly 25,000 arrests in Trump's first month alone, with some operations in sanctuary cities like Chicago and New York. But here's the big question. Can this plan actually work? And at what cost, both financially and socially? Let's dig into the numbers and the real-world impacts using the latest data from February 2025. Okay, let's talk money. Deporting millions of people isn't cheap, and we have got some eye-popping figures to share. Back in 2024, the American Immigration Council put up a report estimating what it would cost to deport undocumented immigrants. For one-time operation to deport all 11 million, they estimated a whopping $315 billion. Here's how it breaks down. $89 billion for arrests, $168 billion for detention. By the way, that's the biggest chunk, likely because you need facilities and staff to hold people. $34 billion for legal processing and $24 billion for actual deportations like flights and logistics. But Trump's not planning a one-time sweep. He's aiming to deport 1 million people every year over 11 years, which sounds more manageable, right? Well, not quite. The plan balloons the total cost of $1 trillion. Yes, $1 trillion, averaging $66 billion per year. Why so much? Well, each year you are still spending $7 billion on arrests, $57 billion on detention, $1.2 billion on legal processing, and $0.8 billion on deportation. The extended timeline means you are raking up repeated expenses plus inflation and logistical challenges. Now, the latest from February 2025 is that ICE is already facing a $230 million budget shortfall just to maintain current deportation level from the last year, when they removed over 230,000 migrants. Trump's ordered the military to help with planes and detention spaces, but even that won't cover a gap without congressional approval for more funding, something that's still up in the air as of this month. Experts like John Sandwick, a former ICE acting director, says deporting 1 million people a year isn't realistic due to these costs and logistical limits. By the way, using military and its flights will significantly increase the costs. So financially, we are looking at a massive investment, hundreds of billions, potentially $1 trillion. But what about the benefits? Does this plan pay off in other ways? All right, let's give Trump's plan a fair shake. What's the upside? Trump and his supporters argue that mass deportation will secure the borders, reduce crime, and free up jobs and resources for U.S. citizens. Now, let's unpack each of these claims. First, border security. Trump says deporting undocumented immigrants will deter illegal crossing. In his first 3 days back in the office, Border Patrol encounters dropped by 35% compared to Biden's last days, partly due to his crackdown rhetorics and policies like reinstating remain in Mexico. But the question is this sustainable? Experts like Andrew Seeley from Migration Policy Institute say Trump's focusing on newer arrivals and those with shaky legal status first, which might temporarily reduce the numbers, but long-term deterrence depends on cooperation from countries like Mexico and Venezuela, some of which are pushing back. Second, crime. Trump's claim undocumented immigrants commit disproportionate crimes, but data from February 2025 dispute this. Studies, including those cited by NPR, shows most ICE arrests in recent years involve people with no felony convictions. 78% only had misdemeanors or no convictions at all between 2022 and 2024. While Trump's targeting criminal migrants, the reality is many arrests are of non-criminals, like Carlos, a Texas resident detained in January 2025 despite no criminal record, as reported in the media. Third, jobs and resources. Trump argues deportation will open jobs for Americans and reduce strain on public services. But here's the catch. Undocumented immigrants contribute massively to the economy. In 2022, they paid $96.7 billion in federal, state, and local taxes, including $25.7 billion to Social Security, $6.4 billion to Medicare, and $1.8 billion to unemployment insurance programs they often can't even access. A study from Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy shows states like California, Texas, and Florida rely on these contributions. Deporting them could shrink the tax base and hurt local economies. In many cases, it might even create inflation, as these immigrants mostly work at below market price, which keeps the prices of goods and services low. So the benefits Trump promises, border security, lower crime, more jobs, are real in theory but shaky in practice, especially with the latest data showing economic contributions and low crime rates among undocumented immigrants. However, this doesn't mean that crimes aren't committed by these undocumented immigrants. And yes, they do kill the jobs by working at below market price. But overall, they're just fine. And I'm talking this in pure economic sense. Elaborating on this, Trump is trying to bring manufacturing back to the US, and this will require labor and cost cutting. Cost cutting is required because the US will be in direct competition with countries like China, India, Vietnam, and Mexico, who can produce goods and services at much cheaper price. If you want to know more about this, then you can check my other video where I spoke about this in details. The link is in the description. Moving ahead, now let's talk about the hidden costs, because deporting millions isn't just about dollars. It's about people, community, and economy. The American Immigration Council warns mass deportation could slash US GDP by 4.2% to 6.8%. Now, why it's like that? Because undocumented immigrants make up 4.8% of the labor force. That is 8.3 million workers in 2022, as per Pew Research Centers. They are crucial in sectors like construction, agriculture, and services. By the way, in construction, they account for 13% of the workforce. Imagine pulling out a third of roofers, drywall installers, and farm workers. Deporting 500,000 undocumented immigrants could cost 44,000 American jobs due to reduced demand and higher labor costs. Prices for housing, food, and services would skyrocket, fueling inflation. We saw this during COVID when 1 million fewer immigrants led to labor shortages and price hikes. Socially, the impact is devastating. About 5.8 million US households have at least one undocumented member, often in mixed status families with US citizens or permanent residents. Deporting 1 million people would break up nearly 5 million families, costing taxpayers $116 billion to support US-born children left behind. Plus, there is a human toll, fear, trauma, and community disruption. Reports from February 2025, like those in Guardian, show ICE raids are already causing panics, with families avoiding public spaces like schools and churches, now unprotected zones under Trump policies. And don't forget the international pushback. Countries like China, Cuba, and Venezuela are refusing deportation flights, while Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum has said they'll stick to their old immigration policies. Trump's team is using visa sanctions and military airlifts, but these challenges could stall deportation, driving up costs further. So, can Trump's mass deportation plan actually work? Let's further break it down critically using the latest data from February 2025. First, logistics. Deporting 1 million people a year, or even 11 million total, requires planes, detention beds, and staff. ICE already has a shortfall of $230 million and limited capacity with only so many beds and flights. Trump's ordered military support, but scaling up that fast is tough. Experts are saying it's nearly impossible to hit those numbers due to cost and complexity. During his first term, Trump deported fewer people than Biden, like 1.2 million removals versus Biden's 4.7 million, as per DHS data, despite promising 3 million criminals. Why? Because sanctuary cities, legal battles, and uncooperative countries slowed him down. Second, legal and political hurdle. Sanctuary cities like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles are pushing back, and the Justice Department suing Illinois and Chicago over their policies. Trump's expanding expedited removal and using wartime laws like Alien Enemies Act, but courts could challenge these moves. Plus, public opinions are mixed. While some support deportation, others fear economic and social fallout, as seen in protests in Los Angeles in February 2025. Third, the economic reality. The data shows deportation could tank industries reliant on immigrant labor, like construction and agriculture, while reducing tax revenues and GDP. Finally, Trump's PR campaign, as reported by Politico and The Bulwark, is framing deportation as patriotic, with ICE agents and TV personalities hyping arrests. But this risks backlash. Videos of family separations and non-criminal arrests, like Carlos in Texas, are already going viral, fueling opposition. The administration targeting non-criminals, with 78% recent ICE arrests involving of no convictions, contradicting Trump's criminal-first rhetoric. So the question is, will it work? Partially, maybe. Trump can ramp up arrests and deport some newer arrivals, but hitting 1 million a year or deporting 11 to 14.5 million total is unlikely, given costs, logistics, and resistance. It's more of a political statement than practical policy, and the economic and social costs could outweigh any benefits. So where do we go from here? As of February 2025, Trump's deportation push is in full swing, but it's hitting roadblocks, budget shortfalls, legal fights, and international pushback. Congress needs to approve more funding by March 14, or ICE's operations could stall. Meanwhile, states like California, Texas, and Florida, home to 47% of undocumented immigrants, face the biggest economic risks if deportations proceed. On the flip side, Trump's deterrent strategy might reduce illegal crossing short-term, but long-term, the U.S. needs immigrant labor to sustain growth. Experts say that Latinos will be 21.2% of the workforce by 2030. Deporting them could shrink the pipeline. For viewers, this is a chance to stay informed. Follow the data, watch for congressional votes, and consider the human stories behind the numbers. Trump's plan isn't just policy, it's people's life. Drop a comment below. What do you think? Should the US prioritize deportation or focus on immigration reform? Let's keep the conversation going. That's it for today's deep dive into Trump's mass deportation plan in 2025. We have covered the cost up to $1 trillion, a benefit which are shaky, and whether it'll work, which looks doubtful given the latest data. If you found this helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more such analysis, and ring the bell for notification. See you next time. Take care and stay curious. Peace out.